All right, so today we're going to dive into some altcoins that could be on the verge of explosion. There's 3 different projects we're going to take a look at, dive deep, and I think you guys are going to like it. My name is Paul Barrow. Welcome back into Tech Path today. Let's talk about, as you guys know, the market, of course, is in dire straits. We've got a lot of pressure on Bitcoin and Ethereum right now, but what happens in these times is when we start to see a lot of adjustments in some projects that go down in price. Now, the many questions I get all the time, whether it's on Twitter or just in general through email and the Diamond Circle, is when is the best time to buy? And of course, as we start to see markets continue to adjust, the point behind these is there a perfect time to get into some of these projects as they've continued their downtrend? So I want to take a look at 3 projects for you guys today, introduce you to a couple of new ones that you probably have not seen us talk about, and then also revisit one that we have talked about before because it's been in our metrics for quite some time. And you can give you guys hopefully some directions. Remember, market movers that we do here on the show are pretty straightforward. We're going to give you some data, some inside analysis, and give you a full understanding of where these projects are heading, but it's not financial advice. The goal here is to educate you guys on where projects are heading, what are the potential boundaries that you need to kind of place on them, and then go out, do your own research, and make a decision if it's right for you. Let's get into the first one, and that is ZRX. And ZRX is a liquidity endpoint for DeFi. Essentially, this is kind of an evolution of how frameworks will be built to work on a lot of different protocols. And I think as we start to see more and more of these develop in the coming months and maybe in the coming year, ZRX is one that I think might be on the edge of something. There's a lot of partnerships here that are really kind of aligning with what ZRX is doing. I wanted to jump into their white paper because this kind of gives you just a framework of what it actually does. So it's an open protocol for DEXs on the Ethereum blockchain. It's intended to serve as a basic building block that can combine with other protocols to drive increasingly sophisticated dApps. This is the key. When you look at dApps and how they're being developed right now, the sophistication of some of these dApps are becoming much, much more interesting. And I think we're going to see a lot, maybe a whole new layer of dApps in terms of their sophistication capability and being able to jump in and go interoperable is going to be very key. And the way I kind of compare this to things out there on the internet, if you think about it in the exchange of growing websites from the days of when they were pre-e-commerce, when we finally had great e-commerce, average e-commerce, and then highly sophisticated e-commerce like what you have now with something like a Stripe. If you're buying anything on the internet now, most likely you've run across Stripe, and that's the kind of integrations that we're going to start to see, I think, in Web3. And of course, the key companies and projects that are going to be leaning into this are ones like ZRX. So ZRX right here on their Twitter, also massive shout out on the integrators, on the ZRX token holders. Let me kind of pop this up because the ecosystem is pretty impressive when you look at the blockchains that they're involved with now. Obviously Avalanche, BNB in there, Celo, Ethereum, Optimism, Phantom, and Polygon. But again, getting back into the supply and the demand side of this, and that's really where the magic works with ZRX. And I think that's one of the reasons we've already started to see this tokens, one, get a lot of attention, get a lot of movement, and potentially be something to take a look at for a long-term play. Now remember, a lot of times when I'm going in, and I'm just full disclosure, I own ZRX. It is one that I purchased during its upstring, and it had an adjustment down, so I took a little bit of a loss on the chin. But I'm looking at this in a long-term play, and as I start to look at some of these projects like Render and Arweave and many of the ones that I do believe have long-term capability use cases, those are the ones that I try to get my head around because those are the ones that I think are going to be the PayPals, the oracles of the future for Web3, and really kind of what we'll see, I think, in the future in terms of development. The other thing that happened with ZRX this last week was their partnership with Coinbase. Now, Coinbase has a very unique situation right now. Coinbase, of course, partnering to power their new social marketplace for NFTs. Just to give you an example, Coinbase gave us access to their new marketplace on the beta side. And I went in, logged in, and of course set up a system. I like first of all, I like the overall look and feel of what they're doing, but if you look at kind of how Coinbase has done this, they've gone a little bit different in terms of discoverability on projects. And this is something they've talked about. And again, I think ZRX and the implementation of what ZRX is doing with Coinbase could really open up Coinbase as being a true NFT marketplace. And this is one that when you go outside of OpenSea, there hasn't been a real killer app that has been able to leverage out. Now, can ZRX really kind of bridge that gap to kind of create that connectivity of it? Maybe so. But good looking beta right now, I think. If you want to go in and shop, you can, of course, jump right in. There's some of Gary V's stuff on VFriends too. Kind of curious, are you jumping into any of the NFTs with Gary V? He had the VFriends first series out, which did very successful. He launched V2, which is like 30,000 of those. And I know his big position was to try to make this more available. Just kind of curious. I know it's off topic, but I just wanted to kind of get an idea of what you guys are doing in the NFT space. So again, lots of movement there. And the other thing with them is the partnerships that they've got locked in, which are pretty impressive. If you look at this story right here, they raised $70 million in an undisclosed valuation on a Series B. This is with Greylock Partners. Greylock, definitely no slouch here. And including NFT marketplace OpenSea, Pantera Capital, Jump Crypto, and even Jared Leto is tied into this. And when you look at their token overall, this one has really taken and soared 47% really over the last couple of weeks, and then almost up 15% over the past 24 hours. So again, just big news I think here is that they are continuing to partner with the right kind of companies and projects. And I think long-term, that's what's going to play out for ZRX on this. And you can kind of see right here's their Greylock partnership they announced on Twitter, partnerships with companies like Airbnb, just to kind of show you Greylock's, roster. This is a heavy-duty roster in terms of team. You've got Roblox in here, Airbnb, Coinbase, of course, Discord, and even Nextdoor, which is kind of cool. But this is my point, is when you get companies that get that kind of attention from this level of VCs and venture fund partners, it just draws your attention into those zones. This is one of those that's not going to be going away. So keep an eye on it for sure. Let's jump over to Render. Now, Render is interesting because we've talked about this on the show before. We've tracked Render for many months. And it's been one of those that we've invested in. I've been in and out, made money on Render, and it's been a project that I'm still very passionate about, in the sense because, as a creator, I just know that the demand for rendering within the metaverse is going to be an issue. If you look at this tweet right here, they kind of go into the stats here, 3.5 times growth in frames rendered, which is huge. And then, of course, behind the network, this was April 26th. If you look at their Medium post, which really breaks this down, and I wanted to kind of show this to you. Let me zoom in on this for you guys just a little bit. But look at this growth right here. Recently moved on from Q1 2020. I wanted to give a peek here over the last 12 months. So Q1 22 saw a jumpstart in creators joining the Render network, nearly 300% growth. So that's huge. The expansion for artists actively using the network is a key priority. So I think that's another factor as we see Render grow their own, is to really understand they got to get out there to the artist community. They also have to get out to the communities that are building and have the needs to build graphics and onboarding those graphics into different kind of use cases, where there's metaverse, other dApps, and other protocols out there that are going to be using this. The other thing is right here, 10 million frames now rendered. 6 million frames were rendered in 2021, 3.5 times growth over the 1.6 in 2020, which is huge. I think this is going to continue to grow. And I think that's the case that we've had and we've talked about with Render many times here on the show, is that this is like, just the minuscule opportunity. It's just getting started for where this project is going to be going. And the price that it's currently rated at could be one of the best buys out there in the cryptocurrency today. Now, granted, it is still highly risky, but it is one of those projects to me that feels like it has a lot of upside. I wanted to further go into some more of their data here. This was kind of interesting to me, creating a 450% increase in peak computing power when compared to Q1 21. And this was another big note that our team kind of pointed out. This is now regularly seeing 1 million available on the Octane bench. So again, this goes back to where network traffic is now consistently large in terms of the amount of frames and the amount of artists that are kind of coming onto the space and moving into this. And you can kind of note right here, network also reached 447 concurrent nodes. So node systems are growing in a decentralized world. If this is your first time maybe jumping into our channel and you're learning about crypto in general, the first thing you're going to understand in a baseline is decentralization. And this is one thing that you have to study to really understand where Web3 is going. Decentralized applications will be the future. It's just a natural evolution of where technology is moving. And it's so powerful with what blockchain has been able to do in decentralizing the whole ecosystem. So don't get too worried that you're not up to speed on some of this stuff, because you can learn this very quickly. Start doing a YouTube dive, get out there and start getting into the Discords and some of the Twitter channels, a lot of the mediums of projects that you might recognize, even on the big ones like Solana or even Render. Just jump into their medium and into their blog and just start reading, and you'll start to understand how decentralization makes for a very important scenario. Back to the point, 447 concurrent nodes on a single rendering job. That's huge, because as you see more power required for doing bigger and more complex jobs, the amount of those nodes growing is going to be a critical factor in being able to grow this. And much like what we've seen maybe just in the storage space. I mean, you've seen that if you think about AWS and kind of how they grew over time. These numbers are primarily composed of early lead users, and render creators will significantly grow as the network onboards more powerful nodes in 2022. So I think that's just simply saying, listen guys, we're just getting started here. So I think that's another reason to take a look very hard into render. Another one, I like this one, real or render. NVIDIA creators showcasing the artwork on the Octane Artist. And of course, this is all tied into render and the 3D tools. And again, a lot of partnerships here that I think are really going to tie into the future of render and where this is going. I love the render tag, which is kind of cool. Also, I want to show you guys a heads up here, because we just added render to the CPI. And just so if maybe you're new on the channel, let me kind of just jump back here to our CPI. Render is in our Metaverse Gaming token list now. So what that simply means is that we track this on an ongoing basis. And this is 3 times a week. We drop sentiment and amplification on these different tokens. If you are on Top Crypto, you're going to see these 15. If you get into Metaverse and Gaming, you're going to see these 9. Currently, this is getting ready to be 10 because we're getting ready to onboard another token that will be indexed. And the index gets you into a little bit more detail. So let's say we want to go back here and look at render. Now I can take a look at the downtrend on the sentiment. We did have a little bit of a bump right here on sentiment and a little rise there on amplification. But the downtrend goes back to much like what we've seen right here on the price. And again, that's where that sentiment bump was. But the opportunity right here, this is the 3-month right here on just on the overall token. You can kind of see it's definitely on its 3-month low, but if you go to its all-time, just to kind of give you an idea of where this is potentially a great buy if you're looking at long-term holds here and looking at long-term strategy, and you know, just like we do, that the metaverse is not going away. dApps requiring the need for graphics is not going away. The only question I would have would be whether or not render is going to run across a big competitor. And when these projects start to roll out, and you'll see this now with Metaverse because of the moves that Apple and Meta are making, is there will be some scenarios where we'll see other applications that create a lot of pressures on some of these kinds of projects, including render. Because if Apple is able to maybe make the leap into Metaverse and do something with their own tool set, they could outpace render, and they could maybe circumvent that. But from the decentralized aspect of where render is going, I don't necessarily anticipate that. And it's not like Apple will be the end-all be-all system, we could still see an Android-like scenario circle around something like Render as it goes. But we are watching these tech projects, much like we watched tech stocks, several years ago when you might be in the, the stock trading industry, and looking at some of the tech moves that were being made in the early stages. I look at that much like what we're seeing right now in Metaverse and a lot of these altcoins that are moving in this direction. So NASDAQ, of course, had this article, which was next big cryptocurrency to explode in 2022. This was just published, a couple of weeks ago. And number 6 is right here at Render Token. So again, I think this just reiterates the point I'm making, and that is that a lot of people are looking at this and going, there's something here. Their growth is real, the technology is real, and the opportunity is real. And especially when you have an MVP or a minimum viable product, and you've got onboarded nodes and you've got use case scenarios starting to develop, this is the first thing that companies and investors look for in being able to blow these projects up. And that's all it takes, because the next big step in, much like what you saw with ZRX, just like we just mentioned, the next big step in is going to be big capital, and big capital helps move the ball forward really quickly. So, all right, let's pause for today's sponsor, and that is Celsius Network. 1.6 million people call Celsius their home for crypto. Join them to buy, swap, borrow, earn, and send crypto all in one app with 0 fees and the best rates. Make sure and head over to celsius.network to get started today. Last up is one that we've been tracking, and ironically, we looked at last year, and it was in its early stage, and this is a project called XCAD. And basically, the concept behind XCAD is very simple. It's a creator-driven economy that's designed, if you guys know much about Brave, the browser, there are built-in tools within the Brave browser. By visiting websites, you can, plug in and you can get access to token values, and, you get paid for browsing. What XCAD is trying to do is this whole, kind of move to watch concept, much like move to, earn, but now it's watch to earn with XCAD. So the idea is recruit a bunch of influencers, build on the influencers ecosystem, create tokens for the influencers, build an NFT ecosystem for those influencers, then build a way for all those fans to be able to get paid to watch the influencers. So to me, it has the potential to be something interesting. I'm always a little bit cautious in these kind of scenarios. And again, with YouTube, it's you always wonder if it's going to be a Logan Paul or many of the thousands of the creators that tried to be a Logan Paul. There's only a handful of them that really kind of make it to that top. So I'm just kind of curious if it preys on the creators and preys on the creators' audience. So that's the only concern I have. But at the same time, when I look at the potential for how the monetization model behind creators, and especially when it can be an audience that starts to remove the ad ecosystem, anything that can help remove the ad ecosystem, I'm for. Because at some point down the road, if there's a way for you to still be able to afford studios like what we have here and be able to put out content, the key there is what is the ecosystem or the model that can be done that way. Right now, YouTube is still the #1 place for monetization, on whether you're a brand and you're trying to get your brand out there on ads, or you're a creator and you're trying to create a business model around it, or you're a consumer and you're trying to get free education. It works for everyone, but I wonder if XCAD is going to be able to kind of replace that. I was looking at their deck, which really gets into a full-blown here understanding of kind of where the industry is faced, and this is their key problem statements, which I would agree with pretty much. It's hard to break into the YouTube algorithm to get views regardless of quality of content. We've seen that here on our show even. Whoa, zooming in too much. Bigger YouTubers are missing out on monetization of their audience further and lack systems to reward loyal followers. This is another problem that we've seen. And then they have creators lacking the ability or system to reward their most loyal fans. This is something we try to do, but it's very difficult within YouTube because there's a lot of rules and regs on YouTube that kind of keep you at bay and kind of check us every once in a while. So we've got our own diamond circle that you can join. And that's one way that we've done it through our email system. We've built our CPI product over the past several years that is creating, an analysis tool for our teams and our system. But I think there's going to be more and more opportunities there, especially around NFTs and utility case NFTs, which we're in the process of building right now as well. So there's a lot happening in this space. Now, will XCAD be the one that creates this and really develops the next layer? Will be interesting. It did break 20 million in the 24-hour trading volume on CMC. So that, to me, at least gets it to a point now where this is a serious project. It's a serious project in the sense that they might start attracting more and more value in terms of not only influencers, but also investors. For the first time ever, you'll be able to earn money by watching YouTube. This goes back to the consumer. We've recently seen a huge growth in move to earn. This is the space. Obviously, everybody's watching us. You know what Stepan's doing. You know what that project is. Now it's time for watch to earn, launching Q2, and that's right now. So you've got a lot happening timing-wise for XCAD, and it has been bumping here the last couple of weeks, much like with Stepan. And if they can compare, which I thought was interesting, a good comparison here from House of Chimera. Market cap 80 million. Stepan's already reached the 1.9. Holders 13,000 on the multi-chain. Stepan focused in on Solana. Industry valuation nice because of the valuation for YouTube and its exposure. And then the opportunity here in terms of the projects launched and just what they're trying to do in terms of user base. Direct reach to 220 million users. I think that will be interesting. And again, having a plugin that's going to just drop into your Chrome or your Brave browser or whatever browser you're using, every time you watch a video, you're getting some sort of reward out of it. This could be interesting and definitely one that I want to keep an eye on. Also, they announced the XCAD single asset staking pools, which is 40% APR. So they've got staking rolling in on their program, which again, I think that's brilliant to continue with that. They are kind of hitting the whole layer here of research, of developing the content creators and recruiting them. I think that will be the next big step for them. They're going to need thousands and thousands to really make a dent in how this might work, because it will depend on the acceleration in the algorithm on the number and pieces of content that flow out into the network. Because it's like anything, when you're in the media business, which I've been in for almost 2 decades, you have to feed the beast. And this would be one of those kind of scenarios that they have to feed the beast to be able to keep the XCAD token rolling, the creator rewards rolling, the rewards to fans rolling. I just wonder if that is a sustainable model. It's constantly going to be iterated on, I'm sure, and there will be a lot of new integrations. My question is, when will YouTube do this and make it available for creators to reward fans and do something like this within the YouTube native? If that were, and just like I mentioned earlier with Render and even with ZRX, there's always going to be a bigger player in the game. The question is, will decentralized outpace many of the bigger players and the legacy players that are already in the marketplace and hold on? That'll be the big question, and that's what we're here to do, is to hopefully give you guys some insights as to how this might look. They even have an influencer market cap, which I thought was kind of cool. This is their market cap by the tokens that are on the influencers, that you can actually go in and buy the token. You can go right in there. This may something, we may test this out just to play with it and see if it really does anything for our fans and for our audience. But you can kind of see a lot of big channels here. You've got channels in here at the 621. There's some down here with Emily. There's 376, but a lot in the space of, I think, more lifestyle and traditional gaming channels, which I think those are fine. Got no problems, because that's volume. The difference is, I think, with, again, goes back to the flow and the frequency of videos and content that has to be put out and maintained in the system right now. So anyway, all right, you guys are tuned in over on the podcast right now. The best thing to do is jump over here to the YouTube channel. This is where you're going to get a lot of the drill downs and also a lot of our analysis, whether we break down into the CPI or do some TA for you. and give you some of our own sentiment data. All of that's happening here on the YouTube channel, so you've got to jump over here, make sure and search Paul Barron Network. Hit subscribe, like a couple of videos, it helps us out. And of course, if you want to reach me out on Twitter, it's @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.